You remember the moment clearly, where you were, what was said, how the conversation ended. But when you bring it up later, the other person looks at you like you're mistaken. That's not what happened. And suddenly the memory that felt so certain begins to feel less stable. At first, you assume it's just a misunderstanding. After all, memory isn't perfect. People forget things, people interpret moments differently. So when they say the conversation happened another way, you consider the possibility. Maybe they're right, maybe you missed something, maybe you remembered the tone wrong, and that seems reasonable until it keeps happening. You remember a promise. They say it was never made. You remember a disagreement. They say you imagine the conflict. You remember feeling hurt by something they said. They insist the words were never spoken. At first, you defend your memory. You explain what you remember. You repeat the moment exactly as it happened in your mind. But every time the conversation ends the same way, with them calmly insisting, that's not what happened.
Sometimes the contradiction appears immediately. You recall something that happened just hours ago, a message, a comment, a short conversation. You repeat their exact words, and they respond with quiet certainty. I never said that. For a moment, you feel completely sure. You remember the sentence clearly, but the calmness in their voice makes you pause. You begin searching your memory again, trying to confirm the detail, trying to be fair, trying to make sure you're not accusing someone unfairly. And during that moment of hesitation, certainty begins to slip. Other times, the contradiction happens days later. You bring up a moment from earlier in the week, something that stayed with you, something that mattered. But when you mention it, they look confused, almost surprised. That didn't happen. The reaction feels so natural that you begin questioning yourself. Did the conversation really happen that way? Did I misunderstand the situation? Did I add meaning that wasn't there? The more you replay the moment, the harder it becomes to trust the memory.
Over time, something begins to change, not in the conversations, in your confidence. Memories that once felt clear start to feel less reliable. You begin questioning details. Was that the exact word they used? Did the conversation really happen that way? Did I misunderstand the tone? The doubt starts small, but once it appears, it spreads. Sometimes the moment happens immediately. You recall something from earlier that day. They pause, look at you, and say, I never said that. And suddenly the memory that felt obvious begins to blur, not because it disappeared, but because it is now competing with another version of events. Other times, the doubt appears later. You leave the conversation feeling confident about what happened, but hours later, their version of the story starts replaying in your mind. Maybe they're right, maybe you misunderstood, maybe you were already emotional and interpreted the moment incorrectly. And the longer you think about it, the less certain the memory becomes. At some point, you begin doing something new. You start checking your memory before trusting it. You replay conversations again and again, trying to confirm the details, trying to make sure you're not mistaken, trying to make sure the moment really happened the way you remember it. And that effort slowly changes the relationship between you and your own perception. Sometimes you even start gathering small proofs. You scroll through old messages, looking for confirmation. You search for screenshots. You check dates and timestamps, not because you enjoy doing it, but because you want to be certain, because being certain has started to feel rare. And the moment you can confirm a memory, it feels strangely relieving, like briefly regaining solid ground. There is a psychological reason this works. Human memory is not a perfect recording. It is flexible. It reconstructs moments every time we recall them. And when someone repeatedly challenges your memory, your brain begins treating that challenge as new information. Your mind starts adjusting the memory to accommodate the contradiction, not because the other person is correct, but because the brain is trying to resolve the conflict. When two versions of reality exist at the same time, the brain naturally tries to reconcile them. It asks questions. Maybe the tone was different. Maybe the meaning was different. Maybe I interpreted the situation incorrectly. Each of these small adjustments makes the memory slightly less stable, and the more often this happens, the more uncertain the memory becomes. Eventually, something subtle shifts. Instead of trusting your memory first, you begin trusting the other person's certainty because they sound confident, because they never seem unsure, because every disagreement ends with them calmly correcting your version of reality. And confidence can be persuasive, even when it's wrong. This is one of the quiet mechanisms of gaslighting. It does not erase your memories, it weakens your trust in them. Once that trust disappears, something important changes. You stop relying on your own perception to understand what happened. Instead, you begin asking someone else, what really happened? And that question quietly transfers control over reality itself.
There are usually signs when this pattern is happening. You begin double-checking your memories before mentioning them. You replay conversations repeatedly in your mind. You hesitate before saying, I remember it differently. You start softening your statements, saying things like, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought, or I might be remembering this incorrectly. Even when the memory once felt clear, you begin asking other people if they remember the situation the same way, just to confirm you're not mistaken. You become cautious when describing past events. You choose your words carefully, trying not to sound too certain, because certainty now feels risky. Sometimes you stop bringing up certain moments entirely. Not because you forgot them, but because defending your memory has become exhausting. It feels easier to let the moment go, easier to accept the other version of events, even if part of you still believes your memory was accurate. And slowly, something deeper changes. You stop trusting the clarity of your own experience.
But there is something important to understand. Losing confidence in your memory does not always mean your memory is wrong. Sometimes the doubt itself is being carefully introduced. Small contradictions, calm corrections, subtle rewrites of shared moments, each one planting a small question in your mind. And over time, those questions accumulate until certainty begins to disappear. Memory shapes how we understand reality. And when someone slowly weakens your trust in your own memory, they're not just changing how you remember the past, they are changing how you interpret the present. Because once you begin doubting your own perception, someone else's version of reality can begin replacing it. So if you find yourself replaying conversations constantly, questioning memories that once felt obvious, or hesitating before trusting your own recollection, pause for a moment, not to accuse, not to panic, but to notice the pattern. Because confusion about your own memory does not always come from forgetting. Sometimes it comes from someone repeatedly telling you that your version of reality is wrong. And the moment you see that pattern clearly is the moment everything begins to shift. And the moment you see it is the moment the erosion stops.